Oh, geez, what game is this?
It's Sonic Adventure.
Excellent. Is it good?
No.
Okay.
It's fucking, it's horrible.
This game blows.
Because
Like
Sonic
a lot.
Adventure is very
Adventure
and
is
flawed
the
once
moment
done.
on
The fans should load up
This
the
was
old
absolutely
game
laughable,
and face the
even by
music.
2006.
Sonic Adventure does not hold up.
Sorry, but I'ma have to disagree. Hey yo people, Rubia Blue here, and this is why I think Sonic Adventure is still excellent. However, these days, with how a lot of people talk about SA1, you might be skeptical. Constantly, whenever this game is brought up, there will always be those who will comment that it's overrated, that fans are blinded by nostalgia, or that the game hasn't aged well. I've even seen some cases of people outright misrepresenting the game.
He blasts off at the slightest tap of the stick, placing insta-kill drops that the camera careens your movement towards.
I'm not saying the game doesn't have its flaws, I dare you to find one game that doesn't. I just don't think that any of those flaws are anywhere near problematic enough to warrant its reputation among detractors. As for me, needless to say, I completely disagree with the negative reputation Sonic Adventure has gained over the years. I truly believe Sonic Adventure to be an excellent game and worthy of the love and praise it gets from its numerous fans. I believe the game is all around great, from the gameplay, to the story, to the characters, to the music, and to the content. I'm going to go into extreme detail with this game and give a detailed analysis and review of everything I think is notable in my opinion that the game is excellent. But as I'll be reviewing the game, I'll of course talk about the things that I think are actual flaws or things that I think could have been improved. Along the way, I do hope to get detractors to understand why people love this game, or even get them to take another look at it, even if it might be a lost cause. But why do I care so much what these detractors say? I'll go into this point at the end of the video, but long story short, I think the smears on the Sonic Adventure series have negatively impacted the Sonic series, making it so Sonic Team shies away from the adventure style when they don't need to. So I want to try my best to push back against that, because ultimately I want a 3D Sonic game that continues SA1 and 2's vision. Before I go on, let me first recommend the Dreamcast Conversion Mod if you're playing the Steam version, because it restores the Dreamcast lighting, textures, it has some bug fixes, and so much more. You can even play with the original Dreamcast models for the characters. I personally prefer the DX models, but thankfully the mod allows me to play with DX models with Dreamcast textures, which is my preferred look. I also recommend the Sonic Adventure Retranslated mod, which takes the English subtitles and makes them match the Japanese dialogue for those who use Japanese voices, and I do. Links for both of these mods will be in the description. But anyway, now that I've laid that out, let's get into the analysis proper. And what better way to do that than starting with the first thing every player will see when starting up the game: the fucking incredible opening. Full spoilers for the game's story will follow. The opening of Sonic Adventure is nothing short of incredible. Amazing visuals, editing, music, and underlying effects on the player. I just love how unapologetic this opening is about being epic, getting you hyped up for the adventure and saying, yeah, we're not fucking around, this is Sonic, bitch, you're in for a wild ride. We open with shots of a coastal city, establishing it as the setting of the game, and showing us that Sonic's world is very similar to our own, and that humans live in it as well, and live a modern life similar to ours. All with foreboding camera shots of these people living their lives. It's not long before shit goes down. We get a montage of absolute chaos and destruction, showing us that there are real stakes to this game, with only shortcuts to each character, showing us that they're only a small part of this whole picture. I love the striking contrast between the destruction and the appearance of the Sonic characters. The chaos and destruction is then interrupted with the chorus of Open Your Heart, the flagship song for the whole game, showing us this game's #1 priority is to get you pumped for an awesome adventure. Holy shit! This is without a doubt one of the best video game openings ever. They made openings like this back when games cared a lot about making a good first impression. This shit blew my fucking mind as a kid, as I'm sure it did to many others. I was like, whoa. This ain't no Mario. I've heard criticisms that this opening spoils the climax of the game, and I agree. It spoils it in the best way possible. The first thing you see when booting up the game is Station Square being devastated and the giant water monster behind it all. Then, when you get into the game itself, you become acquainted with Station Square. It becomes your home, essentially. You don't want anything bad to happen to your home, do you? Then, when it's revealed what'll happen if Chaos gets all the emeralds, you come to a grave realization that you already know where this is headed. It's like Final Destination, or Halo Reach. You're fully aware of the horrible thing that's coming, so it motivates you to try as hard as you can to prevent it, even if it may be in vain, because you know perfectly well what will happen if you fail. All in all, this opening tells you you're in for something incredible. As we get into the actual game, nowadays many people are quick to state that Sonic Adventure hasn't aged well. Looking at the game as a whole, I disagree with this, but there are a few areas where the game does show some rust. The cutscenes, first of all. The character animations are mostly stock animations strung together, and while they did their best to give the characters dynamic expressions, sometimes it can backfire horribly. However, most of the time it's enough to convey what the cutscenes need to convey, and you could certainly get used to it. To the cutscenes' credit, they do feature some interesting cinematography. The camera is always zooming, panning, or giving us interesting angles, so it's not totally dated. Other areas where I'll concede the game aged poorly are the English voice acting, camera, and glitches. Now, I play with Japanese voices, so the English voice acting doesn't affect my experience at all anymore, but I can definitely see a lot of places where the acting and direction falls short.
Oh no!
The camera isn't perfect, but it's nowhere near as bad as it's made out to be. One thing you have to understand is that the camera is automatic, always pointing in such a way that it's obvious where you should go. Now, you do have limited control with the triggers, but sometimes it can be hard to get the camera to cooperate if you're not moving forward. But you can still use it fine in most cases. And if you really want to explore off the beaten path, you can set the camera to manual mode, in which you'll then have full control over the camera. This game does have its fair share of glitches, some of which can result in the player dying. However, they are very few and far between, and once you know about them, they're easy to avoid. Plus, dying in Sonic games is a lot more forgiving than dying in other games. I'm not saying that excuses the glitches, but I don't see how these glitches are any more egregious than ones found in other games, especially Bethesda RPGs. Those games are pretty much strewn together with duct tape, and they're some of the most beloved games out there. There are areas where the game is aged poorly, but I don't think it's fair to expect a game from 1998 to have the same level of technical polish seen in games today. When going back to older games, you have to accept that some aspects are going to be more primitive. Thankfully, in the case of Sonic Adventure, these various small faults don't detract from the overall experience for me, at least not too much. I believe Sonic Adventure to have some of the best 3D gameplay the Sonic series has ever seen, and that in some areas, it's yet to be surpassed. The gameplay in Sonic Adventure 1 is nothing short of incredible. The controls for nearly all the characters are buttery smooth, intuitive, and extremely precise, very easy to pick up and play. I really want to stress how good the characters feel to control. That's something that's integral to any game, how it feels to just use the controls. The way the characters move make you feel like you have freedom and room for experimentation, even if you're just running down a linear path at times. In fact, I think SA1 does basic movement better than any other Titan 3D platformers at the time. In Mario 64, if you turn in a direction that is less than about 45 degrees to your current direction, the character will move in an arc to face that direction you're pressing. And in Spyro, the character will gradually turn in that direction. This can sometimes result in falling off a small platform when trying to face a different direction. In SA1, however, you immediately snap to which direction you press. This makes precision platforming and turning on a dime extremely safe and easy, and it's something I don't think SA1 is given enough credit for. And also, I have to mention just how much mid-air control each character has in this game. That makes platforming even better. Again, in Mario 64, mid-air control is extremely limited. Here though, jumps have a nice floatiness to them and you have a great degree of control. I've heard some say that the floatiness of the jumps is a flaw, but I think that's part of why platforming in this game feels so good. And it's only floaty if you hold down the jump button anyway. Each character's moveset is very simple, yet allows for depth and experimentation complemented by the level design. The game translated the gameplay and physics from the 2D games into 3D very nicely. The level design isn't quite as layered and complex as in the classics, but I think how open they are and the added dimension more than makes up for that. In some areas, I'd say the gameplay is even improved upon from the 2D games. For one thing, the fact that we're in 3D now inherently lends itself to working better with speed-based platforming. One of the challenges the classics faced themselves with was finding the balance between cathartic speed and challenge. In the adventure games, obstacles you can't see coming while you're running are now mostly non-existent. You can have a greater grasp of your environment and you have more room to maneuver. One thing that gets mixed reception though is the automated sections sprinkled throughout, such as loops and the famous whale chase in Emerald Coast. I can understand people not wanting scripted sections in these levels, but the important thing is that they maintain the flow and still feel as if they're involving the player. I mean, the spectacle aspect of it can't be understated. That fucking whale is out for blood, man. And at least at the end of them, you're flung into the air and given an aerial view of the environment, so they're put to good use as short transitional segments between major areas. Sonic Adventure features 6 playable characters that all have their own objectives and movesets. I really enjoyed playing as most of them and seeing things from their perspectives. Not only does this add some gameplay variety, but thanks to the new generation of consoles at the time, they were able to be fleshed out more than ever with their own stories and explicitly shown personalities. I can understand people preferring to have other characters play nearly the same as Sonic with the same objective of reaching the end of the stage, but I really liked that the other characters had different styles and objectives to set them apart. Well, except for one, but we'll get to that. Sonic Team Up to now has had a track record of making enthusiastic use of new hardware and tech. Sonic Adventure continues this by taking advantage of the Dreamcast power to try all different styles of gameplay and to give each character their own identifying style. I can't help but respect Sonic Adventure for its ambition to show what can happen when you have new toys to play with. I see a lot of people say this is padding the game out, and that's true to an extent, but that's what a bunch of 3D games did back then. Mario 64 and Sunshine's mission structure, Ocarina of Time reusing the whole map once as a child and once as an adult, Banjo-Kazooie and Spyro having collectathon-based gameplay, and Silent Hill reusing level geometry, only nightmarified. Honestly, the biggest problem I have with SA1 is that the other characters have a woefully low amount of actual levels. Sonic has 10 levels, with all the other characters having 5 or less, and while it was a good approach to have Sonic have the most levels, I do wish there were more levels for the other characters that really flesh them out more, because this is the best some of them have ever played. The 6 characters share a lot of levels, and as such they needed to be built to accommodate the ones who will be playing in them. I've seen some say this is a flaw in the game design since some areas are more optimized for one character over another, but I think this actually works beautifully, possibly better than intended. For example, Speed Highway and Lost World, where Sonic visits the same locations Knuckles does, I actually think are the best parts of those levels because of how open, intricate, and vertical they are. I love to experiment and find interesting ways to maneuver these environments. And that's something that permeates Sonic Adventure's level design, its size and intricacy. I think SA1 has the best level design out of any other 3D Sonic game. It's either huge and sprawling or vertical and intricate, with linear speed lanes connecting each area. The game adopts the 2D game's level philosophy of open area to speed lane to open area and so on. But even in the linear speed lanes, it doesn't feel restrictive, thanks to the vivid controls and character abilities to play around with. And let's talk about those characters and how they play, shall we? Sonic's gameplay is just flat out incredible and the best he's ever played in 3D. I really can't understate how great he plays in this game. Just like in the 2D games, Sonic smoothly gains momentum as you move forward. This allows the player to platform comfortably, but also to pick up speed when needed. And thanks to the spin dash, you have a way to instantly gain speed, provided you have the skill to handle it yourself. Some people might not agree with me, but I think the spin dash is the best thing about Sonic's gameplay. In the 2D games, you had to hold down and tap A to charge the spin dash. However, in this game, all you have to do is hold down and release the action button, and you can turn freely while charging it up. But you know what's even better? You can continuously tap the action button to friggin' spam it and stay at top speed. I see a lot of people saying this makes it broken, but I think it provides for some amazing gameplay. It contributes to that feeling of freedom I mentioned the controls having, because blasting off at full speed is only a button press away, and the great thing about it is you still retain full control afterwards. But the thing that keeps it from being broken is that it actually takes skill to use effectively. Make no mistake, if used recklessly you'll go flying into hazards and walls. But if you've mastered the controls, you can find amazing ways to traverse the environments and long distances in no time. I mean, just look at any Sonic Adventure speedrunning and you'll see just how much awesome stuff can be done with this game thanks to this single mechanic. These are things I think put Sonic Adventure's gameplay over the boost gameplay for me. One of my favorite tricks is spin dashing and jumping off an upward slope. It preserves your momentum and lets you reach crazy heights, I love it. Another addition that I like a lot is the homing attack. It was included to make it easier to kill enemies in 3D, however it does take some skill to use. You do have to be facing the enemy's direction and you can't home in on enemies above you. Something great about it is that you dash slightly downwards when there isn't an enemy to target, so you can use it to immediately gain momentum coming out of a fall. Even if you think the homing attack makes things too easy, you can still kill enemies by just jumping into them, which is sometimes faster than using the homing attack. One thing I don't like about Sonic's gameplay is one of his power-ups, the Lightspeed Dash. I like how SA2 did it better, where it's just a button press, whereas here you just have to charge it up. But it's mostly optional and for alternate routes and levels, and its charging time can be cut down by another power-up, the Crystal Ring, so it's not a big deal at all. Though a power-up I do like is the Lightspeed Attack. Barring one instance in Sonic's story, it's entirely optional, but I love to charge up and decimate large groups of enemies with it. Sometimes it can go weird and you'll be stuck spinning around an enemy, though you can easily control the attack a bit with the control stick and get out of that loop. Though I must say, it is kind of entertaining when it happens. You can actually do double damage on Chaos 6 if you use the Lightspeed Attack on him, which was a really nice touch. Though as far as I know, he's the only boss that you can do it on, so it's a bit inconsistent in that aspect. Another nice touch is that Sonic's levels all feature different acts with their own music tracks, just like 3 and K did. However, these are all considered the same level and flow right into each other. Each act will have something unique about it. Speed Highway is the best example of this. The first act has you running atop the buildings and through the roadways in the skyline at night. The second act is a transition, running down a skyscraper while dodging obstacles. The third act has you reach the ground level of the city where the sun has begun to rise. Speed Highway just might be the best level in Sonic Adventure, maybe in all of 3D Sonic. This level was chosen for Generations for good reason. It's just a shame it didn't have the ground level Dawn section. Overall, Sonic's gameplay has a lot to offer, with a lot of depth and a skill gap accommodating all players, whether you're blazing down a slope or exploring using the smooth controls. I hope you understand why I say this is some of the best 3D Sonic gameplay we have to date. Likewise with Sonic, SA1 features the best 3D Tails, no, the best Tails gameplay we've ever seen. Because in the classics, Tails' flight was relatively slow, especially vertically. Here, it's lightning fast and you have a great degree of control over it. At the risk of sounding repetitive, his flight controls feel super good to maneuver and are easy to understand. He's at his fastest when flying, in fact even more so when you get the Jet Anklet power-up, which is available as soon as you start Tails' story. And you actually have a lot of control over Tails' flight patterns. If you hold the action button while flying, Tails will descend extremely quickly, which you can use to great effect to make an absolute joke out of his Windii Valley if you know your way to the end. And also, you can preserve Tails' energy if you let go of the jump button at the cost of descending slowly. So you won't run out of energy and drop rapidly, so you can get extra distance this way. Tails, unlike Sonic, doesn't have a spin dash like he did in the 2D games. Instead, he can roll into a ball while running, which still does damage and is great for picking up momentum down a slope. Something I love is that in Windii Valley, when rolling down a slope, if you bump into the wall, you'll get flung into the air, which you can then chain into flight. Even if it's a glitch, I think it's actually really fun to take advantage of. Tails' primary attack this time around is his tail attack, which gets upgraded later into a continuous twirl. The cool thing about it though is that you have to do more than just hold down the action button. While your Tails will kill enemies if they hit, you can still take damage if you just rush in and Tails' body makes contact with the enemy. You have to keep a good distance, but also spin the control stick in the direction Tails is moving, which makes him spin twice as fast. Just goes to show how something as seemingly simple as this attack can actually have some depth to it. Something that lets Tails' campaign down a bit is how much of it is pretty much the same as Sonic's. They both fight the Egg Hornet, Chaos 4, and both have both acts of Sky Chase. Because of this, I recommend Tails be the last character you play so it doesn't feel as repetitive. Thankfully, most of Tails' levels play completely different from Sonic's thanks to his unique abilities. And at the very least, Tails' Speed Highway is a masterpiece of a level, definitely one of the best levels in the whole game. And his final boss is a fun one that he gets all to himself. I might be overreaching here, but I find Tails' objective of raising a character to the end of the stage to be very fitting considering he spent so much time living in Sonic's shadow. And that successfully beating him reflects his story's theme of him growing into his own and believing in himself. As amazing as Tails' gameplay is, it's sadly underutilized. Tails in SA1 is the epitome of there not being enough of a good thing. He only has 5 levels, one of which is just snowboarding, and another is way too confined to properly take advantage of Tails' flight. And while the other 3 can make great use of Tails, it hurts me that he doesn't have more levels. Because I love him in this game, and we haven't had any worthwhile on-foot Tails gameplay since. Here's to hoping we get this kind of Tails gameplay again at some point, because it is brilliant. Knuckles, like Sonic and Tails, has been very well translated into 3D, likewise with improvements. Like, Knuckles no longer loses all momentum after landing a glide and instantly starts running after hitting the ground. Though now he's lost the spin dash like Tails and can also roll into a ball while running. I actually prefer it this way since it puts emphasis on Sonic as the crazy speed character. Tails and Knuckles are still very speedy themselves, but I feel the spin dash is something that should be exclusive to Sonic. Another improvement from the classics is Knuckles' climb is now way faster. These are things I found strange that Mania didn't take note of when including Knuckles. Same goes for Tails too, come to think of it. Anyway, Knuckles' gameplay involves non-linear hunting for 3 shards of the Master Emerald, so it's a slight change of pace from Sonic and Tails, but functionally the same, only the focus here is on speedy exploration. Knuckles' moveset in 3 and K already facilitated increased exploration, so I find this objective for Knuckles' levels very fitting. And it takes advantage of his moveset very nicely. And like I said, I think his sections actually make for the best areas in Sonic's level when he has to go through them because of how open and vertical they are. It's just a shame you're not ranked for your performance in this game, because there are tons of huge areas filled with enemies to kill and items to collect, but you don't need to do anything other than find the emerald shards to complete the levels. I like to go after items and enemies on my own volition, but it would have been nice if we had more incentive to do things other than collect the emerald shards. While I do like SA2's hunting stages more than these, the radar system in this game is much better. It works on all pieces at a time, which means you can go after them in any order. I understand why it was changed in SA2, but this system does feel more intuitive and natural. Knuckles also gets a power-up that enables him to do the maximum heat Knuckles attack. It's functionally identical to Sonic's Lightspeed Attack, so naturally I love it. And just like Sonic, Knuckles can use it to do double damage on Chaos 6. I can't talk about Knuckles without mentioning his Casinopolis, which is just filled with detail and an entire second floor Sonic couldn't access. Featuring pirate ships with animatronics, a sexy cowgirl sign, and a giant freaking lion statue. But the best part about his Casinopolis is the giant Sonic statue in the middle, which you can build up in Sonic's version with the rings you deposit. You can go up to it and freaking destroy the thing. An emerald shard is sometimes even hidden inside it. I just love this because it implies Knuckles hates Sonic's bloated ego that much and doesn't give two fucks about tearing it down, literally. I definitely appreciate Knuckles in this game for shaking things up a bit, and I really enjoy playing as him. So now we move on to Amy Rose, a bit more of a divisive character. Some people don't like playing as her, other people do. As for me, I like her gameplay. It's more traditional platforming compared to the other characters, and that's fine. You're put in the shoes of a character with no extraordinary abilities, and you're chased through each stage by an Eggman robot called Zero. This makes her stages some of the more tense in the game since you can't destroy Zero, you can only stun him with Amy's Pico Pico hammer. Speaking of which, I love that they decided to give Amy a cutesy hammer. I think it reflects her brash and headstrong personality nicely, and thanks to it, Amy is able to perform acrobatic maneuvers that can be mastered to efficiently traverse the environments in interesting ways, and even skip over some parts. Her acrobatics add a nice layer of depth to her gameplay, and it's good that her gameplay can provide a way for skilled players to optimize their gameplay. At some points in the level, you can hide from Zero by hiding in barrels and moving around in them. I never used them, but newer players might do well to take advantage of some stealth until they can get the hang of Amy's acrobatics. The main two problems I have with Amy is that I wish she had more levels, and that I wish she had a faster movement acceleration. Amy only has 3 levels, meaning most of her story is just cutscenes, and that's a shame because I think there's real potential for Amy to shine here. As for the latter issue, Amy does move a bit too slow for my liking. Well, it's more that she has a really low acceleration rate. The low acceleration works on the other characters because their top speed is significantly faster. However, since Amy is slower, you don't need a lower acceleration. Though this issue is relatively minor since all you have to do to instantly pick up speed is jump, and that'll be enough to chain into Amy's acrobatics. There are points in Amy's levels where you must complete certain tasks to progress, such as hitting 3 switches or placing keys into the correct holes. I hesitate to call these puzzles, but the fact that Zero is usually chasing you during these does add some intensity. I know I was definitely pretty scared during Amy's levels as a kid, especially in that creepy-ass Mirror House act of Twinkle Park. Overall, I really like Amy's gameplay, I just wish she moved a bit faster and that there were more levels. Though her stages do well to maintain a skill gap to where experienced players can still find ways to improve their gameplay, and it did offer a contrasting experience of vulnerability and tension that none of the other characters had. I hope at some point they expand on the ideas with Amy laid out in this game, particularly her hammer acrobatics. Next up is E102 Gama. This guy's gameplay features shooting up lots of enemies while constantly moving forward. You're actually on a time limit and you have to chain together combos on enemies to earn more time. Naturally, since these stages feature a bunch of shooting, destruction, and explosions, I find it very satisfying. Obviously, it's more primitive compared to SA2's more refined shooting stages, but I do think Gama's stages have some things over it. For one thing, Gama's movement is much more unchained than the mechs in SA2. He has a much wider array of movement and is just as buttery smooth as the other characters. His jump height is also easily 4 times of that of the mechs. Though his jet booster power-up sadly doesn't preserve his upward or forward momentum like the boosters did in SA2. A nice little touch is that after running for a while, Gama will transition to a wheeled mode which is faster, making it easier for him to traverse long stretches in his levels and on the adventure fields. And also, whenever you need to cross a body of water, Gama will transition into a hover mode. These didn't need to be included by any means, but they are, and I think they're a nice attention to detail and pretty charming. My favorite Gama level by far is the Hot Shelter, which contains pretty fun segments exclusive to him, where you're riding atop these trains and gunning down all the robots in your path. Good stuff. Gama's bosses are pretty hit or miss. In 3 of them, you only have to mash the action button, but the Zeta Boss fight is actually pretty interesting, in which you must hit all the targetable spots when running around and dodging incoming missiles. The final beta boss fight is by far one of the best in the game, not counting the emotional weight behind it. You have to dodge his flurry of attacks while also trying to break through his defenses with some of your own. In some ways, I definitely think SA2 improved on the formula, for example, the more in-depth combo system. In some ways, I think SA1 had better movement controls, so it's really up in the air which I like better. I hope if this gameplay style ever comes back, they can combine the best aspects of both. At the end of the day, though, I had a lot of fun with Gama. Now, you all know what's coming. Big the Cat. There's no pussyfooting around it. Big the Cat is the worst part about the game. It's not even that I hate his gameplay, I think it has some redeeming qualities. It's just that Big is required to unlock the last story when his story barely adds anything to the overall narratives and his gameplay is such a pace breaker. But let's go into Big's gameplay anyway. His gameplay involves fishing for his friend Froggy and other optional fish. And to be fair, his stages can be completed extremely quickly provided you know how the fishing system works. And I can't go on without mentioning his one boss fight which can be completed in less than 3 seconds, hilariously. You fish by casting your line into a body of water and swinging the line left and right while reeling in. Once something bites, you have to reel it in while making sure your line doesn't break, as indicated by the meter. You can hold the jump button to reel in fast or the action button to reel in slow. Sometimes reeling in can go on for minutes at a time and it's actually pretty intense, especially with the more valuable fish, the crazy music being the main factor here. Once you catch Froggy, the stage is complete, but you can catch other fish which will increase your score. There's actually a wide variety of very unique fish to catch, like sharks, eels, robot fish, and what the fuck? Big's levels are actually a lot more expansive than you would think. There are lots of secret areas for him to explore where you can find rare fish and more power-ups than any other character. I mean, good god, they put a lot of thought into Big's Ice Cap, his most intricately designed level by far, to the point where it's the only level which contains a power-up. It's crazy to think how much work they put into these areas purely exclusive to Big. At the very least, I give them points for trying to make it good in its own right, but why is it in this game? Make no mistake, Big really is an outlier in this game, but truth be told, the amount of detail and thought they put into his gameplay and levels, I gotta respect. Even so, either Big shouldn't be required to unlock the last story and should only be a joke side mode, or they should have made Big play in a way that fits more in the game. I mean, could you imagine if Big's gameplay involved him smashing through enemies with his huge body and smacking them with his fishing rod? Like another game? Hell, you could go a step further and have Big use his fishing rod as a fucking grappling hook to swing around the environment like Tarzan. He does live in the jungle after all. But as he is right now, he's definitely something of a blemish on this otherwise great game. But in no way does he detract from the other styles, so overall, not a big deal. And speaking of the last story, let's talk about the perfect Chaos boss fight, which you go head to head with him as Supersonic. The cool thing about this boss fight is it puts the momentum system of the game to good use. You have to gain and preserve speed in order to damage Chaos, otherwise you'll fail to do anything, and all the while Chaos is launching mini hurricanes, shooting energy spears, and firing laser beams to stop you. God damn is it fun to skate across the water navigating around his attacks, then blasting the giant bastard from the inside out. The boss fight isn't too difficult, but god damn is it exciting. The music and story weight of course contributing to this feeling. The only questionable element here is the music. The boss fight has 2 phases, the first having the amazing theme song of SA1, Open Your Heart. The second having a more suspenseful disaster piece type of track. I like the second track and all, but god damn if it isn't disappointing that Open Your Heart doesn't play throughout the entire fight. However, I can't say the music really detracts from how freaking epic this fight is, and that's the most important thing in a Supersonic fight. So, I want to stop for a second and talk about how the playable character system works in this game. You have 6 campaigns and you choose to play one at a time, though you can exit out of one and start another anytime you want. I like to call this the character roulette system. I like this system and I think it has some benefits over how SA2 handles it. The great thing about this system is that it doesn't force you to change characters and subsequently play a different gameplay style when you might not want to, not counting the minigames in SA1, and I think that's a good system. The forced character switching is one of SA2's most contentious issues after all. However, it does have a downside in that you're going to be retreading a lot of already covered ground. I mean, watching the same cutscenes, doing the same bosses, and even the same minigames in a lot of cases. However, I don't think these flaws are intrinsic to the system itself, more so that SA1 doesn't change things up enough between each story. Without a doubt, the most tedious part of the game everyone can agree on is the Chaos 4 fight, which you have to wait around for him to expose his weak point and you have to do it 3 times as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. And also, Tails does the exact same Sky Chase minigame Sonic does in his story. I can understand if they didn't really have time to make each character's scenarios really different from each other, but it would have been nice if there were more to shake things up in between each story. And actually, there is. In the cutscenes, particularly with the English dialogue. A really nice touch in the dub of Sonic Adventure is that the dialogue is different for each story. It conveys the same thing, but it takes advantage of the English language's ability to word things in a whole bunch of different ways.
Without more emeralds, the monster can't transform, so it's up to us to get the emeralds before Eggman does, huh? You're right. Chaos must be stopped. And he can be if we keep him away from more emeralds, right? So what do you say, Sonic? Let's find the Chaos Emeralds before Eggman does.
So while the cutscenes are still very similar between stories, they're at least different enough in the dub to warrant watching again. This, I think, is the one thing the English voices have over the Japanese ones. But although you have the same cutscenes time and again between stories, at least in the DX version you can skip them. Throughout each character's stories, particularly Sonic, Tails, and Amy, the gameplay will occasionally be broken up by a minigame, such as pinball, snowboarding, whack-a-mole, or the aforementioned Sky Chase. I can see how this might break the flow of the game for some, but I actually have a lot of fun with them, and I think they add a nice charm to the game, particularly the pinball games in Sonic's Casinopolis, featuring a Sonic-themed pinball game and a Knights-themed pinball game. Sure, they bored me as a kid, but as I've grown older, I've come to have a lot of fun with them, and seen that they're actually really well done and in-depth. Only thing I don't like about the Knights one is the automated segments, which I tend to accidentally activate all the time. It's cool the first time you see it, but after that, it just gets a bit tedious. The great thing about Sonic's Casinopolis, though, is that if you don't want to play pinball to get rings to complete the level, then you can get ejected into the trash and collect rings in a more traditional style level format if you lose all your balls with less than 100 rings. The metaphor at play here is genius. The game is saying this is where you'll end up if you gamble irresponsibly. Take notes, kids. Overall, I don't think the minigames or unique gameplay segments overstay their welcome, and I think they add some charm to SA1 such that it wouldn't be the same without them. Something that adds a whole new level of charm to Sonic Adventure is the adventure fields, the hub worlds where all the levels are connected and where power-ups can usually be found. There are 3 main hubs. Station Square is basically your home throughout the entirety of the game, it being a friendly, welcoming place. Notable places include the entrance to Twinkle Park, which houses the entrance to the respective level, but also the Twinkle Circuit minigame, the hotel, which houses the entrance to the Station Square Chow Garden and Emerald Coast, a burger shop with a weird interactive statue and an ongoing story that I'll talk about later, and the antique shop where you can find a golden Chow egg. There are also points in each character's story where you'll find an Easter egg of cream flying about. The Mystic Ruins is the largest hub, and Angel Island, having crashed back into the Earth, is counted as part of it, hint hint. The jungle is a vast part of the Mystic Ruins that is actually quite easy to get lost in. The jungle is also where Eggman's base can be found in certain parts of the story. Notable locations in the Mystic Ruins include Tails' home and workshop, the altar of the Master Emerald, Big's house in the jungle, the Ice Cavern where you can access Ice Cap, a returning level from Sonic 3, the ruins of the Echidna Temple, which is the entrance for Lost World, and the lake where the Silver Chow Egg can be found. Connected to the Mystic Ruins is the aforementioned Eggman base, where you can find really cool callbacks to the classics in the form of Metal Sonic and Mecha Sonic. The Egg Carrier is by far the most detailed hub though. There's so much cool stuff to find and look at, and because of all this detail, we get a look into Eggman's lifestyle. We see that he uses his intelligence to build himself a life of luxury. Just about every part of the Egg Carrier is notable, but there's Eggman's private quarters that includes the bedroom, the game room, the swimming pool, and the brig where the Black Chow Egg can be found. This hub's Chow Garden is unique since it requires you to spell out Eggman's name to access it. There is another adventure field that is only accessible in the story, and that's the Mystic Ruins in the past, where we get a look at the ancient Echidna civilization. The city features many buildings and roaming warmongering citizens, and the temple that is buried under the jungle and in ruins in the modern day. The other part of this hub is the altar of the Master Emerald, still intact and also housing the Chaos Emeralds, maybe the Super Emeralds given their size. It's awesome enough that they let us cool down from the levels in these hub worlds, but what makes it even better is that you can talk to any NPC, and they'll tell you a bit more about the world or even their own ongoing story, and there's a lot of those. Throughout the story, a lot of NPCs have storylines that progress as you clear levels. Standout examples include a girl waiting for her father at the train station, disgruntled employees at the train station, a man who cheats on 2 girls with each other, a boy whose mother has a gambling addiction, A girl who must work up the courage to confess her love to the burger shop employee? A woman whose husband is an explorer whom you can actually meet in the jungle? And so much more. You can get some particularly funny dialogue if you talk to NPCs as Big or Gama. The adventure fields are integral to Sonic Adventure 1 and make the game an adventure. Sonic Team had the goal of taking advantage of the Dreamcast to really flesh out the world and characters of the Sonic universe by implementing small but jam-packed hub worlds for the player to discover things in if they want to. All of this stuff is optional. You can totally just go from level to level without interacting with the world much, but it's there if you want to know more about the Sonic world and the people who live in it. This is the stuff that gives SA1 life and makes the whole game rich in content you're left to uncover by yourself. The adventure fields give SA1 a charm that will be remembered forever. In the 3 adventure fields, you'll find the entrances to 3 distinct Chow Gardens. The Chow are virtual pets which you raise to your liking, where you can compete in races and earn prizes. The small animals you collect in the stages are used in the Chow Garden to alter your Chow's look and increase certain stats. You also use the rings you collect to buy various things from the black market, like Chow eggs, fruits, equipable items, and so on. The system in the DX version was actually carried over from SA2, which I think has the superior Chow system, so I'll save my analysis of the Chow Garden for that game. But I will say this, you can visit the Chow Garden at any point in the story, and it serves as a very nice cooldown from the story if you want it. Even if the system is better in SA2, the Chow are still very deep and there's a lot of fun to be had in the Chow Gardens. Through the story, you'll collect emblems by clearing each stage. Each stage also has 3 missions with their own objective and their own emblem to gain. But you can also find emblems hidden throughout the adventure fields and within the stages themselves. Speaking of emblems, Mission Mode is a mode where you must complete an objective based on an obscure hint that tests your knowledge of the game. Objectives like Tails cutting grass around his workshop, fishing for a mecha fish in the hotel pool, or finding a ghost prisoner in Red Mountain. Beware though, there are 2 missions that stand out really difficult, and you'll probably spend a lot of time on them.
Yes! I got it! Yes! I never give up on these challenges. I persevere, and I get it. That's an important message in life, kids, to take away from. Keep persevering, and you will always achieve your dreams.
Each mission completed yields an emblem, but what are all these emblems for? Well, the more emblems you get, you unlock more and more of the lesser-known classic games like Sonic Drift, Sonic Labyrinth, Triple Trouble, the Game Gear games, Tales' Sky Adventure, and so much more. Sonic Adventure is so content-rich it has games within its own game. But for collecting all of the emblems, you'll unlock a playable Metal Sonic in all of Sonic's stages. Even after the story is complete, Sonic Adventure offers a ton of content that will keep you busy for hours. Even if some of it might not interest you, there's probably something that will. This is, by far, the most content-rich Sonic game ever released to this day. And that's definitely something worthy of praise. So there you have it. Sonic Adventure's gameplay and content is some of the most fun and rich in the entire series. At the surface, you have fun, satisfying, and intuitive gameplay with a lot of depth featuring memorable, detailed levels. But if you're interested, there's a whole new world of content waiting to be uncovered. I frequently revisit this game, and that's a sign that this game has content that is long-lasting and able to withstand the ages. The gameplay might not be for everybody's tastes, hell, no game is. And of course, the game does show some cracks and rust being made in 1998, just like every other early 3D game. But I still think this game's gameplay is some of the best in the series yet and is worthy of the love and praise it gets. And it set the table perfectly for future games to expand on the ideas laid out. So the story is something I barely see Sonic Adventure 1 given praise for, at least nowhere near as much in comparison to Sonic Adventure 2. And SA2 does deserve it, but I think SA1's story is sorely underrated, probably because of the dated cutscenes. However, I'm more than willing to get used to the old cutscenes because Sonic Adventure offers an awesome narrative filled with excitement, laughs,
ねえこの小鳥さ追われてるのちょっとの間ボディーガードしてよ
tension, character and world building,
行うものそば
7つの混沌、混沌は力。力は心によりて力たり抑えるもの。そは混沌を滑るもの。どういうことを言ってるのかよくわからないけど、7つのっていうのが引っかかるのよね。あのエメラルドの数と同じ。エメラルド？
And deep themes that we can apply to our real lives.
まだ飽き足らないっていうの？他の国に攻め込んで物を奪ったり人を傷つけたり、そんなのはもうたくさん。
In keeping with Sonic Team's habit of excitedly using new technology, they took this opportunity to flesh out and expand everything laid out in the classic games, and then some. It's a logical evolution of the classic simple but good stories when you have more powerful hardware to work with. Sonic Adventure's story serves as a great introduction to the Sonic universe for newcomers, while also fleshing out and expanding on everything the classics laid out. You don't need to know what went down in the classics to enjoy the story of this game, but there are still a bunch of continuity nods to them that older fans will enjoy. I know I did.
どういうことだ。もしかしたらまさかまたエッグマンに騙されたのか。うるさい。単純というかなんというか。
These nods show that Sonic Team were really on top of their game when it came to weaving together a cohesive world and narrative. In particular, Sonic's story, the only one available when starting up the game, introduces the world and characters very well, and also establishes the overarching conflict. Sonic's story is simple, but that doesn't mean bad. It's a good and exciting one that is very nicely paced and well structured. You see, Sonic's story is a major change of pace compared to the classic games. In the classics, you had Sonic constantly pushing Eggman's grip on territories back, freeing animals and wrecking his robots, liberating areas. But in SA1, this dynamic is flipped on its head, and it's the heroes who are constantly losing ground to Eggman. Not only is this an interesting change of pace, but it also boosts Eggman in the eyes of the player, because how he achieves his victories in this game is genius. At the start, he confronts Sonic and Tails and outright tells them what his plans are, which is something he never did before. That he's going to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds to power Chaos up and destroy Station Square. He baits Sonic and Tails into collecting the emeralds for him in an attempt to keep them away from him. And time again, he ambushes them and steals the emeralds they've collected, while also collecting other emeralds of his own. It can't be understated how important it is to have Eggman be a competent villain, and a credible threat in the eyes of the player, because it makes it that much more satisfying when he finally goes down. And what brings Eggman down in the end is his own overconfidence. In the Chaos 6 boss fight, Eggman tries to help Chaos kill Sonic by freezing him with nitrogen capsules. But Sonic, using his own smarts, manages to use them against Chaos, and that's how he takes them out. Had Eggman not done this, Sonic wouldn't have been able to harm Chaos 6 whatsoever. I find Eggman's hubris being his downfall fitting, since earlier in the story it was Sonic and Tails' own carelessness that saw them getting shot down on their first assault on the egg carrier, so they've learned from their mistakes the second time they assault it. And that's another subtle thing I like. Early in the story, Sonic endangers both Tails and Amy because of his carelessness, so by the time things start getting really deadly, the egg carrier losing altitude and going to confront Chaos 6, he tells them to escape while they still can. This is what makes Sonic likable. He's not just a snarky hero, he's a snarky hero who knows how to use his mind and take responsibility. This game in particular shows us how Sonic interacts with the other characters and his relationship with them. The game fleshes out Sonic and Tails' brotherly relationship. I love how at the end of Sonic and Tails' story, they both ended off by telling each other about their adventures that they had. Also, I love these funny little moments between them.
Wow! 近くで見るとますますとんでもないぜ。
ソニック、安心してないで早くエミーを探そうよ。すっごーい変形したよ。ねえねえ見た今の。
シュート。これじゃあの環境まで行けないぜ。
ビジュアル。
And with Sonic and Amy, even though we see that Sonic has a distaste for her fangirlish attitude, he still won't hesitate to help her out when she needs it. Tails' story is very similar to Sonic's, retreading a lot of the same ground, but he does have a lot of stuff unique to him. His story is all about him growing into his own and learning to believe in himself and stop relying on Sonic. We can see since the classics he's harnessed his immense intelligence and is now building planes of his own powered by the Chaos Emeralds. Near the beginning of the story, he crashes 2 planes. Later, he builds an even more badass plane, learns from his mistake, and successfully defeats the egg carrier's defenses, and then ends with him saving Station Square from a missile attack from Eggman and defeating his huge mech all by himself. This kind of progression from zero to hero is intensely satisfying, and it's especially powerful for younger players because it's centered on a young boy. This game is the main reason Tails is my favorite character. I just can't help but smile every time I see how happy Tails is with himself after defeating Eggman on his own. We also get to see how Tails met Sonic in a flashback. Tails was a lonely kid, but was excited the moment he saw Sonic, and the fact that he was able to keep up with Sonic was enough for them to become friends. Also, can I pause for a moment and say how it's just another point of badassery for Eggman that he had a missile prepared just in case his plan with Chaos failed? I mean, even if it was a dud. Knuckles' story is all about him trying to restore the Master Emerald so he can return to how things used to be, which is quite a relatable goal. I love that Knuckles doesn't even know why he's guarding the Master Emerald. He's just accepted that that's his job and that's enough for him. Shows how straightforward he is as a person. Through his endeavors, he must contend with his lineage, his people's history, being forced upon him repeatedly via visions of the past by Tikal, even if he may not want it. And we get another badass point for Eggman as he manages to trick Knuckles again into getting him to fight Sonic so Eggman can make it easier for himself to snatch the emerald from him. This isn't so much a point against Knuckles' intelligence, but more so a point towards Eggman's. I mean, it makes sense, Knuckles being all alone most of the time definitely has pretty unrefined social skills. And he only antagonized Sonic after he mistook the green emerald he was holding for a piece of the Master Emerald. By the end of the story, Knuckles decides he's better off not knowing his people's history, because he wants to maintain how things are. This shows how someone even as rugged and tough as Knuckles can be scared. Scared of his lifestyle being disrupted by the knowledge of what his people did. So he'd rather stay ignorant. Quite a solemn tone to end on, but damn if it isn't effective for his character.
これからもこの空に浮かぶ島にいるだろう。マスターエメラルドを一人守って。その意味、すべては知らない方がいいのかもしれない。知れば、何かが起きる気がするから。
Amy's story starts with her bored of her everyday life and longing for the days back in Sonic CD when her life was filled with excitement thanks to Sonic. Another relatable feeling, longing for the good old days. It's not long before she gets what she wishes for though. She meets a tiny bird and must protect it from an Eggman robot, Zero, because it's carrying a Chaos Emerald. After which, she meets Sonic and straight up asks him to look after the little bird. This makes me laugh because of how bold and innocent she is and that she just asks someone as busy as Sonic to be a bird's bodyguard. Even funnier if you remember at this point in Sonic's story he's trying to find Tails after getting the tornado shot down by Eggman. Amy's carefree and bouncy nature continues to cause Sonic trouble as he insists they go on a date to Twinkle Park and ends up getting herself captured. I like how through Amy's story, she's doing her best to protect and care for the birdie, which shows her kind and loving personality. And I think that's the most important aspect of her personality. Sure, she might be good for comic relief and a sense of lightheartedness with her bouncy attitude, but at her core, Amy is the humanity of Sonic's friends, the one whose greatest weapon is her words and kindness. And this is shown in her brief but touching friendship with Gama. Even if he's an Eggman robot, Amy still tries to reach out to and reason with him. And it works, with more help from the bird than she knows, but still. And later, she even returns the favor by stopping Sonic from destroying Gama, and I love how resolute she is in telling Sonic to stop.
だからソニック、やめて!
After which Gama questions why, and all she has to respond to is, "We're friends." Can you feel the heartwarm yet? Amy decides to take things into her own hands and help the burb find its parents. They search high and low and eventually find them, but soon after, Zero injures the bird, and Amy goes berserk on him.
絶対許さない!
And fucking destroys Zero all on her own. Even if her most powerful weapon is her words, and she doesn't have any superpowers, she's still not afraid to kick some ass. Even Amy understands that sometimes even words can't do everything. And it shows just how loyal she is to her friends. Super satisfying conclusion. Amy's story is all about her living by Sonic's example, doing good and taking matters into her own hands. And it ends with her resolving to make Sonic respect her.
エミーは自分のできることをやるわ。それでいつかあいつを振り向かせてやるんだから。それから追いかけてきたって遅いんだからね。
I can't understate how great of a role model Amy is for the kids playing the game. Big's story is largely inconsequential, which shouldn't be all that surprising. Like Knuckles, Big's story features him trying to return things to the status quo by trying to get his friend Froggy possessed by Chaos's tail. The only thing we learn in Big's story is where Chaos's tail went and how Eggman got the yellow Chaos Emerald. Gama's story is by far the most tear-jerking one. It starts with us getting a closer look into how Eggman operates with the completion, or birth, of Gama. Gama gets pitted against his older brother Beta, which you'll find to be a rather fitting name, and a rivalry is born. Gama then serves aboard the egg carrier along with his other siblings. He outperforms them all, which results in this charming little moment that I love.
お前はやってくれると思っておったわい。
Eggman then deems the rest of them worthless and banishes them from the egg carrier, and we get this moment which plants the seeds of Gama turning against Eggman. After that, Gama stumbles upon Beta undergoing significant reconstruction and augmentations, and I just love how even though he barely speaks, this scene conveys Gama's disturbed so well.
Beta. 部屋を間違えたようだ。
Soon after Gama experiences Amy's kindness and is strangely affected by the blue bird, he abandons Eggman. And this scene geniusly conveys Gama's struggle to make a decision by sorting through his memories.
Dr. Eggman, Master 登録解除。
His mission then becomes to quote-unquote rescue his robot siblings, who have all now taken refuge in various locations and are trying to make themselves stronger because of the blow to their pride by Eggman, and that means destroying them, freeing the animals within them. They aren't all too happy to see Eggman's star pupil once he shows up to their lairs though. Gama is successful up to the point where he realizes that if he himself were to be saved, that would essentially mean committing suicide. Notable here is that this is the only time Gama refers to himself as Boku, showing his non-robot heart is shining through.
僕は
But before he can, Beta shows up again, and it's now one last battle with a double purpose. 1. To free the animal from within Beta, showing Gama's kind-hearted nature, and 2. A battle of robot pride, to truly see who is the strongest in the end. And amazingly, even with all of Beta's augmentations, Gama still comes out on top and frees the animal within him. Well, almost. Beta strikes a killing blow right back on Gama. After which it's revealed that it was the bird from Amy's story's family that were forced to fight each other this whole time. God damn, that's some powerful stuff. It also means, if the pink color is anything to go by, Gama was female this whole time. So while we should by all means be happy that the animals are free, it's still bittersweet because for better or for worse, the Gama we know is dead. But I think this also gives new light and context to all the animals we've seen trapped in Eggman's robots, and what he's been doing to them and putting them through this whole time. I think it's a unique case of Sonic Adventure's story retroactively enhancing the classic games by giving that much deeper meaning to our gameplay, and that the robots we destroy are effectively torturing the animals inside of them. It really makes me think twice about running past those mechs when I think about what those animals must be going through. Gama's story is nothing short of amazing. An amazing story about pride and freedom. Through all of Sonic Adventure 1, there is an overarching narrative about Chaos, the Master Emerald, the Chaos Emeralds, and the Echidna Tribe. In each character's stories, Tikal shows them visions of the past, and depending on the order you play the characters in, it's shown out of order, more or less. I love this style of storytelling because you have to piece together all the information to get the bigger picture. I've heard people say it doesn't make sense that Tikal would show so many uninvolved people these flashbacks, but if you think about it, it does. Tikal is frantically trying to warn everybody about the impending disaster that's coming, albeit very haphazardly. And every time she shows a vision of the past to somebody, they're involved in some way. She only shows it to Tails, Big, and Gama when they're chasing after Froggy, who is possessed by Chaos's tail and holding Chaos Emeralds. And when Amy is trying to protect the blue bird who is holding the light blue Chaos Emerald. To Sonic when she leads him into the ruins and shows him the mural of Chaos. And if you notice, she shows most of the flashbacks to Knuckles, her descendant, so it's not like she's doing it without purpose. These flashback sequences are really well done, and it turns the overarching story into something of a puzzle. And that puzzle builds up to and culminates in the last story, which you unlock after completing all the other stories. Thanks to everybody letting their guard down thinking Chaos is dead, and Knuckles gathering 6 of the Chaos Emeralds in one place, Chaos is able to sneakily gather the emeralds on his own with ease. And with that, the impending disaster the opening and Tikal warned you about has come to fruition. I can't understate how powerful it is that in Sonic's first 3D venture, you ultimately fail. Thousands of people are now dead, an entire city destroyed, and all of this happened because one man closed his heart. Chaos wants revenge on the world because of what Pakakamak did to the Chao. In Tikal's own words, he's filled with anger and sadness and is unleashing all of that on the world. All along, Tikal was urging for her father to open his heart to others, since he was always sieging others' countries, stealing and killing, so that the cycle of hatred could finally end. But even now, Tikal has closed her heart to Chaos and proposes imprisoning Chaos back in the Master Emerald. Very nice dramatic irony there. Amazingly enough, it's Sonic who leaves his heart open to Chaos.
それはダメだ。それじゃ今までと同じじゃないか。あいつの心は怒りと悲しみに縛られたままだ。永遠に解放されはしない。
Because he of all people would hate to be trapped in one place for all eternity, stewing in anger and sadness. I just love how even though Sonic was fairly static in his own story, in the last story his character personality is pivotal. It doesn't matter who is wrong or right indeed. Tails knows how they can end this nightmare though. The Chaos Emeralds turn people's thoughts into power, right? Well, Chaos's thoughts were purely that of anger and sadness, so therefore that is what he drew out of the emeralds. So logically, Sonic should be able to draw power from the polar opposite, kindness and empathy. And so, that's enough to let Sonic go supersonic in one of the most badass moments in all of gaming.
Sonic! Sonic! Sonic!
カオスエメラルドの力を引き出すのは怒りや悲しみだけじゃない。僕らがソニックを思い、ソニックがみんなを思う、そんな心だって大きな力を生むことができるんだ。
It's so fucking shonen, I love it. Sonic is going to bring Chaos down, being powered by the positive feelings of him and his friends. This fight is more than just Super Sonic versus Chaos, it's a metaphor for kindness and empathy versus anger and sadness clashing. Because Sonic was able to open his heart to Chaos and understand how he was feeling, even Chaos is now able to have a happy ending, even if he may not deserve it. Super Sonic erased the negative emotions boiling within Chaos, and because of that, Chaos is able to see that the Chao he protected so long ago have continued to live and prosper with the humans. And with that, he and Tikal can finally be at peace, knowing that the Chao can live in peace.
よかったね、ソニック。ソニック？
And Sonic, his job being done, rides off into the sunset. God damn, this game's story is underrated. This seriously deserves just as much praise as SA2's story can, if not more so, because this game's story breathes so much life into the Sonic world, develops its characters, provides a wide array of emotions, and ends off with a powerful and very real message. The message of, when you close your heart to others, all you create is a cycle of hatred, but if you open your heart and empathize with others and understand where they're coming from, you can end it and achieve something great.
でも父さんたちはあの子たちの最後の場所をも奪おうとするの。だから彼も心を閉ざしてしまった。いつか理解し合える日が来るといいんだけど。
Even if no one else does, I appreciate SA1 for its amazing narrative immensely, and I will always remember it and its characters for the great impact it had on me as a person, and how I can enjoy it every time I return to the game. So, the last thing I want to talk about is the soundtrack. This game has one of the greatest video game soundtracks ever created. It's certainly my favorite ever. The music ranges from funky to adventurous, to fun, to bad fucking ass. Or any combination of those things. In large part thanks to the main composer of SA1 among several other Sonic games, the brilliant genius Jun Senoue. My favorite Sonic composer. He even went so far as to remix some of the tunes he wrote in past games. But you know what's even more awesome? Every character has their own theme and they're all awesome. Even if some of it might not be to your taste, the lyrics are just delicious, you gotta admit.
I do understand the feelings of a person. So cute. I had to shave it.
These themes do an amazing job at fleshing out the personalities of the whole cast, and you can get some real insight into who they are if you just listen to the lyrics. And of course, you can't forget about Open Your Heart, the flagship theme for the whole game. Good gravy. Each character theme has some intense meaning behind it, so maybe I'll make a video in the future dissecting them. I really can't describe to you how amazing the soundtrack is, just go and listen to it yourself. All I can say is the soundtrack does an amazing job to convey all of the feelings of the adventure, whether it be fun, serious, suspenseful, or action-packed. I think Sonic Adventure 1 is still excellent. I know not everyone will share this opinion, I just believe this game is given a raw deal these days, one I completely disagree with. I hope I've laid out to you just why that is. I just want to point out that the treatment of the Sonic Adventure games can have and has had a negative effect on the Sonic series. It's because of the attention garnered by 06 that the Adventure series is now considered retroactively bad by association. And ultimately, I think it's the main reason Sonic Team is so shy of making an Adventure 3. They think it's a risky move when it's definitely not. The Adventure games are still highly regarded by many people and sold extremely well. But speaking to the detractors directly, you need to realize that those many people feel the way they do about the game for a reason other than just nostalgia. And frankly, I find trying to downplay their enjoyment of the game to be wrong. Sonic Adventure is one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm not afraid to say I think it is an incredible game. Every time I come back to it, I find another thing I love about it. It's a game I can enjoy for nearly everything about it, and I think it deserves to be regarded just as highly as Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time. This is the type of Sonic game I want to see come back, more than anything, and that's why I made this analysis, to show people what's so special about the game, and to get them to open their hearts to us adventure fans. I hope I've made you understand why I and many other feel Sonic Adventure was excellent, and still is. Thanks for watching, it's been a pleasure diving into this game so deeply, a game that I love so much. Peace out. Hey yo people, thanks for watching the video. Next up is my Sonic Adventure 2 analysis, but don't forget to also keep an eye out for my Let's Plays and animated series Manifest Heart. Thanks again for watching everybody.